I've got an empty repo here where I've just configured the basics of Terraform. I'm going to use S3 as the backend for state storage and also a DynamoDB lock table. These are sort of things you want to do when you're running Terraform from CI, where things could be running in parallel to make sure they don't clobber each other. I've also configured the Buildkite provider version 0.11 and configured it here, so it's going to be using my HashiTalk demo org in Buildkite, and the API token is actually set using the environment variable Buildkite API token. To create an API token, head over to Buildkite to your personal settings, API tokens, and new API access token. Give it a description. Give it access to any organizations that you're going to be managing with Terraform. It needs read and write permissions in the REST API to pipelines, and it also needs GraphQL API access. And then you can hit create a new token. That'll then take you to the next page where you can copy your token one time. It won't show you that token again, so be careful. And so the first thing we want to do is create a pipeline. I like to call my Terraform files after the repository name, so I'm going to call it HashiTalks Demo 2022. And if we open up that file, I'll paste in this snippet that I've generated already. Just walk you through it here. I'm going to call the pipeline HashiTalks Demo 2022. Configure the repo URL to clone. The default branch is going to be main, and then the default steps are going to be to upload the pipeline from the repository. Jumping back to the terminal so that we can apply this. Alright, Terraform's finished applying that plan. The next thing we need to do is create an agent token so that we can start up an agent to be able to run the builds. Let's do that now. Back inside the terminal, I'm going to create a buildkite.tf file that's going to house the agent token resource. Paste that in. This is going to create an agent token that we can then pass to the Elastic Stack so that when it boots up agents, they can register to our organization. While we're here, let's create an instance of the Elastic Stack. This resource is going to use our Elastic Stack CloudFormation template to create a pool of agents so that we can run our builds. You can see here I'm going to use the agent token created above, and I'm just going to boot up one instance on a T3 small. So now we can do another Terraform apply to create these resources. Alright, here we go. It's finished applying. It's created an agent token and an instance of the Elastic Stack. You can even head back into our Buildkite organization and see that an agent is now running, ready to run some builds. Jumping back to the terminal, let's create a real simple pipeline file. Just going to create it with one step, just to echo hello, just to prove it's working. So now we can add and commit that. Push it up. Now we can head back to Buildkite and trigger a new build. Here's that build. We've got to green now. It's uploaded the pipeline and run all the steps. The next useful step is to connect Buildkite to GitHub so that when commits are pushed, it triggers a build automatically rather than having to click new build here. We're back in the terminal now. I want to open up our pipeline resource file so that I can add in some GitHub resources. So I've already created the repository in GitHub, and I could import that into the Terraform state, but for now I'm just going to use a data source to look up that and then add a webhook. So here's the webhook resource. I'm using the repository from the data source and connecting it to the Buildkite pipeline's webhook URL. It needs to take JSON, and we want to validate SSL, so I want to disable insecure SSL. Make sure it's active, so it's actually going to send the webhook, and it needs the deployment, push, and pull request events. Let's exit this and do a Terraform apply. So that's finished applying now. The next thing to do is commit those changes, push them up, and see that it triggers a build. Here's that build that was triggered from a webhook. It's nothing too interesting just yet, really. It's what we expected. Now let's modify this pipeline so that we can actually get Terraform planning and applying from within Buildkite itself. So to do that, we're going to need to edit the steps that run and run some Terraform things. Here's the pipeline file I'm using for this demo. The first step generates a Terraform plan and writes that plan to an artifact. And then it blocks the pipeline to make sure the plan gets manual review. You might want to do this because Terraform will likely be touching production resources and might delete or add things you don't intend on. And then once someone unblocks the pipeline, the last step will download the plan from the artifacts and apply it. Let's commit this to the repository and trigger a build. Here's that triggered build. You can see it's now blocked, waiting for manual review of the plan. If we have a look at the plan here, you can see not much is going to change. Because I've hard-coded the agent access token, it's always going to think there's a change there because it's a private parameter. But this is in a state where we could apply this. So we could unblock the pipeline, let it apply. It'll end up doing really nothing in CloudFormation since it's the same token. Here we go, the pipeline's finished applying the plan now. And have a drill down into the log output to see that it was updating the CloudFormation resource, and it's now finished. So that concludes the demo. Just to recap what we've done, we've configured Terraform with a remote state, added in the required providers, we've created a Buildkite pipeline, hooked it up to GitHub through a webhook so that when commits are pushed, it triggers a build, and we've also created a Elastic Stack instance so that builds can run in AWS.